Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvanadhari Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvakacharya Charya Ashtatara Shishi Mad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvakacharya Ashtatara Shat Shishi Mad Bhaktisiddhanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Garadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Vrindavan Dham Mathura Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Om Agna Timarandasya Gana Gana Salakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manu Bistam Stapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swa Padantikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, this week, we're preparing for the Advent of Lord Krishna. Of course, it feels like a celebration of something that happened in the past, but we know that this wonderful event is not a past event. It's happening right now. So today, I've chosen to read and speak from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Part 1, Canto 10, Chapter 2, which is the prayers by the demigods. And these verses talk about how Krishna was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki. How his birth is not an ordinary birth. So I'm reading texts 16, 17, and 18, and I'm reading the purport from text 18. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supersoul of all living entities, and who vanquishes all the fear of his devotees, entered the mind of Vasudeva in full opulence. Text 17. While carrying the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart, Vasudeva bore the Lord's transcendentally illuminating effulgence, and thus he became as bright as the sun. He was therefore very difficult to see or approach through sensory perception. Indeed, he was unapproachable and unperceivable even for such formidable men as Kamsa. And not only for Kamsa, but for all living entities. Text 18. Tato jagan magalam achyutam sam samahitam surasutena Devi dadara sarvatmakam atmabhutam kastayata nandakaram manasta. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, accompanied by plenary expansions, the fully opulent Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all auspicious for the entire universe, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki. Devaki, having thus been initiated by Vasudeva, became beautiful by carrying Lord Krishna, the original consciousness for everyone, the cause of all causes within the core of her heart, just as the East becomes beautiful by carrying the rising moon. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As indicated here by the word manasta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was transferred from the core of Vasudeva's mind or heart to the core of the heart of Devaki. We should note carefully that the Lord was transferred to Devaki not by the ordinary way for a human being, but by diksha, initiation. Thus, the importance of initiation is mentioned here. Unless one is initiated by the right person who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart. The word achyutamsam is used because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sad Ashvarya Purna, full in the opulences of wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. The Supreme Godhead is never separated from his personal opulences. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ramadi Murtishu Niyamena Tistan. The Lord is always situated within all his plenary expansions, such as Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha. Therefore, the word achyutamsam is specifically used here, signifying that the Lord is always present with his plenary expansions and opulences. There is no need to think of the Lord artificially, as yogis do. Dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa pasyanti yam yogina. Bhagavatam 12:13-1. Yogis meditate upon the Supreme Person within the mind. For a devotee, however, the Lord is present, and his presence need only be awakened through initiation by a bona fide spiritual master. The Lord did not need to live within the womb of Devaki, for his presence within the core of her heart was sufficient to carry him. One is here forbidden to think that Krishna was begotten by Vasudeva within the womb of Devaki, and that she carried the child within her womb. When Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, he appeared just like the glowing sun, whose shining rays are always unbearable and scorching to the common man. The form of the Lord situated in the pure, unalloyed heart of Vasudeva is not different from the original form of Krishna. The appearance of the form of Krishna anywhere, and specifically within the heart, is called Dham. Dham refers not only to Krishna's form, but to his name, his form, his quality, and his paraphernalia. Everything becomes manifest simultaneously. Thus, the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with full potencies, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki, exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered the body of Devaki from the body of Vasudeva. He was beyond the conditions of the ordinary living entity. When Krishna is there, it is to be understood that all his plenary expansions, such as Narayan and incarnations like Lord Nrsimha and Varaha, are with him. And they are not subject to the conditions of material existence. In this way, Devaki became the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is one without a second and the cause of all creation. Devaki became the residence of the Absolute Truth. But because she was within the house of Kamsa, she looked just like a suppressed fire, or like misused education. When fire is covered by the walls of a pot or is kept in a jug, the illuminating rays of the fire cannot be very much appreciated. Similarly, misused knowledge, which does not benefit the people in general, is not very much appreciated. So Devaki was kept within the prison walls of Kamsa's palace, and no one could see her transcendental beauty, which resulted from her conceiving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Commenting upon this verse, Sri Viraragava Acharya writes, Vasudev Devaki Jatarayor Hridayayor Bhagavata Sambandha. The Supreme Lord's entrance into the womb of Devaki from the heart of Vasudev was a heart-to-heart relationship. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who is daily opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So the prospect of giving a class related to the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the Lord of the universe, Govinda, Krishna, the little cowherd boy who stole the hearts of all the residents of Raja and killed any demon who dared to cross his path, is certainly overwhelming. In the second canto, chapter 1, verse 25 of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada describes how the materialistic person is advised to meditate on the Virat Rupa, the universal cosmic manifestation of the Lord. I just happen to be reading this canto right now in this verse. So when I read this, I was thinking maybe I should be giving a class on the Virat Rupa. But for purification, Krishna has asked me to give a class today. So it is actually inconceivable that God, the Creator, is a little baby. Srila Prabhupada's words describe much better than I can how amazing this is. Actually, and this is from this verse 25, Prabhupada writes, in the Bhagavad Gita, it has been proven that the original transcendental and eternal form of the Lord is Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead. But by his inconceivable internal potency, Atma Maya, he can expand himself by multifarious forms and incarnations simultaneously without being diminished in his full potency. He is complete, and although innumerable complete forms emanate from him, he is still complete without any loss. And this Supreme Personality of Godhead is born as a little boy in the prison house of King Kamsa. This is certainly an amazing and mysterious occurrence. He who makes the entire universe vanish by withdrawing his great breath, he is that little cowherd boy Krishna. From the beginning, Srila Prabhupada was very clear and emphatic that we should never think that the birth of the Lord has anything to do with the material energy or the common material process of appearing in this world. In a certain sense, this concept was not that unfamiliar. I was raised Catholic, and before I even knew what a virgin birth meant, I believed it. Basically, because if you didn't, you were not even really a Christian. And in the Middle Ages, the Inquisition would have executed me. So, I believed. Interestingly, Srila Prabhupada, it's not exactly the same mystery, but it's a very similar mystery. Srila Prabhupada and the Srimad Bhagavatam, they don't just expect us to just believe. Our mind, our intelligence are engaged in these verses, in understanding and getting a glimpse of understanding how this could have happened. Right before I became a devotee, I had professed being an atheist for some time. And then I read Krishna book, how Balaram was transferred from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, how Krishna was born adorned with his transcendental paraphernalia. I did question that. It's a little much for me to understand, of course. With material intelligence, these kind of statements, they don't compute. And so I questioned, and never really understood the answers very well. They actually led to even more questions. Finally, I just concluded that I was just too neophyte to ever have a glimpse of true understanding. But this much I did know and accepted, that the birth of Lord Krishna has nothing to do with the material energy, and it is part of the spiritual process to understand this. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, "One who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities never takes birth again in this material world." So how do we come to this understanding? How is this known? Only by undivided devotional service can I be known as I am, Krishna also says. So Krishna is revealed through surrender to the instructions of the spiritual master. This understanding is not an intellectual exercise, but somehow the mind has to perceive this fact. Srila Prabhupada understood that his disciples have to be convinced with their intelligence and needed a strong philosophical basis for spiritual advancement. So today, we are so fortunate we read these verses of the 10th canto, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a service to our spiritual master. And this is our qualification for gaining a glimpse into the understanding of these verses. Srila Prabhupada, being expert at attracting conditioned souls back to Krishna, is giving us what our intelligence and our doubting, materialistic minds need to hear. Srimad Bhagavatam verses and purports. I personally cannot even imagine what conclusions I would come to without the purports. How many times while reading with my husband have we just been overwhelmed by reading a verse? He'll look at me, I'll look at him. What exactly does that mean? And we might talk a few words, and then one of us will inevitably say, "Let's read the purport." Always when we read the purport, not so complicated after all. Because Srila Prabhupada, being the acharya that he was, knew exactly how to explain, knows exactly how to explain these very lofty spiritual understandings for very common people, which we all are in Kali Yuga. So let us look at this very important purport again. Prabhupada writes, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead was transferred from the core of Vasudeva's mind or heart to the core of the heart of Devaki. Not by ordinary human way for human beings, but by diksha. The spiritual master is the person who carries the Lord within his heart and he can empower his disciples to carry the Lord within the core of his or her heart. In the previous verse, it had said that while carrying the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart, Vasudeva bore the Lord's transcendentally illuminating effulgence, and thus he became as bright as the sun. And it even says that he was so effulgent, no one could even see him. He became so surcharged with spiritual energy that ordinary people could not see him. That's actually, we could give a whole class on just that. So Vasudeva was in this fully spiritual state, carrying the Lord within his heart. The form of the Lord, situated in the pure, unalloyed heart of Vasudeva, is not different from the original form of Krishna. Vasudeva's heart became the Dham of the Lord. His heart being the Dham of the Lord, it became possible for, quote, the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full potencies to be transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki, exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. So Devaki became the Dham. She became the residence of the absolute truth through Diksha. And she accepted this Diksha with such sincerity and such love that Devaki became like the flames of a fire covered by the walls of a pot, as bright as the sun. She became the residence, she became the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's completely inconceivable that such a thing would happen, that Krishna would become so merciful that he would, I mean, even though Devaki was such an exalted personality, she was Jiva. She is Jiva. And Krishna entered her womb. It's quite amazing. They were both glowing, but it's described in these verses that no one could really see this, because they were in the prison of Kamsa, not because the walls of the cell were too thick or the dungeon too deep. The glow could not be seen because the prison guards had not the eyes to see. Kamsa had not the eyes to see. When Vasudeva left the prison with baby Krishna, they all fell asleep. These are not just descriptions meant to make the story more mysterious and interesting. Krishna appears in the prison house of the material world, in a prison. The guards never saw Vasudeva passing through the halls, doors, and gates because they were asleep. One has to wake up from the slumber of material existence, from the slumber of the intoxicating effect of material existence, to be able to perceive the absolute truth, personality of Godhead, that lotus-eyed child in the arms of Vasudeva. When I was very young, I'm very old, when I was very young, I thought I could wake up with LSD. This so-called guru, Timothy Leary, had promised that little, it was blue, tablet would cleanse the doors of perception, and we would see everything as it is, infinite. I remember reading this and I thought, that's for me. That's what I want. It didn't work. Actually, it covered me over even more. The first time I chanted with the devotees in Tompkins Square Park in New York, I'm ashamed to say, but it's true, I was actually at the end of an LSD trip. And I was so intoxicated. What was supposed to be cleaning the doors of perception, I was so intoxicated with that I was not able to fully accept the mercy of the holy name at that time. It took a few more years, not very pleasant ones. Still, the holy name is so merciful, and Srila Prabhupada is so merciful, that Srila Prabhupada brought the holy name to some very degraded people who were seeking in all the wrong places. So what is capable of cleansing the doors of perception so we can see Krishna? The causeless mercy of the spiritual master in giving his disciple Diksha. We are not as qualified as Devaki to receive that Diksha. Still, the spiritual master is so kind that he is giving the disciple the opportunity to carry the Supreme Lord within his heart. On the most auspicious day of Janmashtami, we must pray sincerely for the grace of reciprocating with our spiritual master, surrendering to his instructions so that our hearts can be transformed more and more from a chaotic and dirty place to becoming the Dham of the Lord, so that we can finally have a true heart-to-heart relationship. As Sri Viraraghava Acharya wrote, the Supreme Lord's entrance into the womb of Devaki from the heart of Vasudeva was a heart-to-heart relationship. So, I was hoping it would take a little more time. But maybe it's good this way. If there are any devotees here, have any realizations they would like to share or questions, there's good time for that. Yes? Whoever. I noticed two people at the same time, so. Oh, okay. It's Mataji's day. Thank you, Prabhu. She goes first.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
So I was just reading about Dhruva Maharaj last night, actually listening. It's amazing narration. It mentions in there that the Lord, just like you said, He's so kind that He actually gave His abode to Dhruva Maharaj. But then there was a further discussions afterwards saying that those who help other living entities, serve them, and see the Lord in their heart, to them, Lord gets so pleased that He actually gives even His abode. So these are secrets of surrender, serving other living entities, especially Vaishnavas, and we should not discriminate. And of course, other part is austerity. So austerity, charity, and sacrifice. So that was magnified in that episode, because after Dhruva Maharaj attained the kingdom, he was really very kind to all his citizens. Anyway, that's my point, that Lord is so merciful, He even gives His own abode.
Yes, Lord is very, very merciful. Srila Prabhupada is very merciful. He gives the disciple instruction on how to please Krishna. It's all based on service. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam, it's all service. And as Mataji said, the Lord becomes very pleased when we share, when we serve other living beings. And of course, the ultimate service that we all have to render is to somehow or other attract everyone to the lotus feet of the spiritual master, so that the spiritual master can, through Diksha, can enlighten that soul and turn that hard heart into a Dham. It's a gradual process. We shouldn't be discouraged and thinking, oh, I'm not pure devotee, my heart is not a Dham, my heart is just full of so many anarthas. And in a way it's true. We should have that humility and we should see and think like that. But we also should know that it is a gradual process. And I kind of picture, when you open up your computer and the program starts, the little blue line starts very, very tiny, and it goes all along, and then finally, right before the page opens up, the whole thing is blue. So I kind of picture my heart like that, And sometimes even that blue line can go back a little bit. It goes from 80% back to 60% open. But if you close your computer, then you're not going to get it. You're not going to, get what you wanted. So you have to leave it open, you have to keep going, and then eventually the whole thing will open up. So our hearts are being turned a little bit at a time into a place, a Dham, a place where the Lord can come and abide. Yes, Prabhu? You had a question? No? Oh. Yes? Pavitra. Jitendra, sorry. I look at you and I think of your good wife. What can I say?
Hey, Krishna. Since you mentioned Timothy Leary, I'd like to tell a story quick.
Okay.
As people probably don't know, but Timothy Leary introduced LSD to the world, and he was telling everybody how it will open your consciousness, like Mataji was saying. In 1977, I saw Timothy Leary in the airport in Chicago, and he had just come off a plane, and he had a frantic look on his face. For 3 hours, he wandered back and forth, trying to figure out how to leave the airport. It took him 3 hours of looking at the signs, walking back, and the devotees in the concourse, we were all just standing there laughing because, everybody knew who he was, and we could see that his brain was totally scrambled. He couldn't even figure out how to get out of the airport. 3 hours walking back and forth. So I don't think the LSD is the way, just for anybody who's considering it. It's really not the path.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Please, can you tell us the story of your first Janmashtami?
I have to make a confession here. I'm hard of hearing. So when you speak very, very clearly, because a lot of times I don't hear very well.
Hare Krishna. Please, can you tell us the story of your first Janmashtami?
My first Janmashtami, I'll be honest, I don't remember. I don't remember my first Janmashtami in the movement. I joined in New York, and in the beginning it was just a big blur, you know. Actually, every day was such a festival. It was all, it was all amazing and wonderful. I do remember my first Janmashtami at New Vrindavan. That was where I guess I was awake enough by the time I got there that I was able to remember. And I remember when I was told that we had to fast all day until midnight, I said to my husband, I don't think they really mean that we're not supposed to be eating at all. Because that just seemed just impossible to do. But then he went and found out, and he came back and said, no, really, we're supposed to not eat anything all day. And I was, wow, I don't know if I can do that. Then I was told, well, if you have to, eat a little bit of fruit. So I got through that part of the day like that. But I remember reading Krishna book. We read Krishna book for quite a long time in the evening in the temple. And I was actually amazed and surprised at how it filled the void that I was feeling. So, and then of course, when the curtains opened, Radha Vrindavan Chandra were wearing a new outfit. And in those days, in the beginning of the movement, you know, a new outfit was made by the Matajis, and it was a great struggle for many, many months to just sew the simplest of outfits, because it's not like there was a huge team of people, and it's not like a lot of times we didn't even have, you know, beautiful sari or something to use. We would just get some fabric. Oh, of course, the best that we could get, but still, it was a very big endeavor. And always, it was a last-minute, all-night endeavor, all-night, all-day endeavor to get the outfit done. So that's what I remember. Yes, Prabhu. I really apologize for, I didn't mean to.
I have a New Vrindavan Janmashtami story. You probably know this. Srila Prabhupada was there, and of course the devotees have been fasting all day long. And because Srila Prabhupada there was so many sannyasis, and they were reading Krishna book, like you said. And all day, no food, very, very tired, working so hard. They were sitting there listening to Krishna book, and you'd see all the dandas going like this as they were falling asleep. The sannyasis are falling asleep. All the devotees in the back, all they're seeing are these dandas going up and down. Everybody's falling asleep up and down. And they get to the end of the chapter, everybody would wake up, sit up, thinking, okay, now we're going to take prasadam. Prabhupada go, next. We're going to read another chapter. And they would read, same thing, dandas up and down, everybody's falling asleep, get to the end of the chapter, and Prabhupada goes, next. And they're like, the devotees were just dying. And finally got to the end of the third chapter after midnight. Prabhupada says, okay, now we can take prasadam. Haribol! Everybody woke up and very happy.
Wonderful. Actually, I think I got my memories mixed up there. The deities wore a new outfit in the morning. You know, I'm an old lady, it's been many years. But they did get a beautiful new outfit, and I can still see that in my mind's eye.
Your first chanting in Tompkins Square Park, what year was that?
That was 1967. Srila Prabhupada was actually in he was on the West Coast. This was in the early 1967, probably February, March. So it was not Srila Prabhupada in the park, it was the devotees in the park. But they were very faithful to doing this. And I remember several times going and chanting with the devotees. There was a local bookstore that had, you know, I don't know if it was a bookstore, it was more a store where you could get what you needed when you wanted to get intoxicated. But they sold, they sold Back to Godhead magazines, and they sold the first Krishna album. And I remember we bought that Krishna album. And on one side was chanting Hare Krishna, you know, singing. And on the other side was that very famous, full of nectar, little talk that Srila Prabhupada gave about chanting the holy name. If anyone here is having difficulty with their rounds, I advise you to Google that talk and listen to it. Srila Prabhupada said everything we need to know about chanting the holy name in that little talk. It is a complete jewel of transcendental information and ecstasy. Srila Prabhupada was actually sharing his ecstasy on the holy name with all the Malechas and Yavanas that were buying the record. Anything else? Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.